Mike Elko. Well, who knows? Because last night, Joe, Texas A&M allegedly or apparently was going to hire Mark Stoops as the next head coach at Texas A&M. Obviously, everybody knows that Mark Stoops is currently the head coach at Kentucky. But, Joe, it would appear now everybody's pretty much in lockstep that this looks like it's going to be happening, that Mike Elko will be the next head coach at Texas A&M. Joe, he was number one on my list. Okay, for Texas A&M. I know that he was number one on your list at Texas A&M. He has been a fantastic defensive coordinator. The way that Duke has played this year, I think shows, look, even though that they are a 7-5 football team, they had a couple of quarterback injuries. They couldn't stay healthy along the offensive line. They still played really good football. He developed a defense that played teams like Clemson really tough and won. Played a really good Notre Dame team down to the wire and should have won that game. They've had multiple seasons of some really good wins. Mike Elko was at Bowling Green, Wake Forest, Notre Dame, Texas A&M as the DC. He did fantastic at all those stops. Now, I'm sure that you can talk about it a little bit more, that you're a Notre Dame guy, how good he was at Notre Dame, but especially was pretty good at Texas A&M. In 2022, becomes the Dukes, or Duke Blue Devils, I should say, head coach. He's 16-9 in his tenure. I think that this is a good hire because, look, defensively is where they've made their hay the last couple of years. Now, it would appear that Elijah Robinson, the defensive line coach, the co-coordinator, is going to remain there, be the DC. Mike Elko called plays at Duke. I would assume he's going to call plays again at Texas A&M. I don't mind a guy calling defensive plays when he's as good as Elko is. The question becomes and will continue to become, who's he going to be his OC? What is he going to do with the offensive staff? Because he has weapons. Can he keep this recruiting class intact? Can he keep some of these guys like Evan Stewart from hitting the transfer portal? He's got a really good group of core nucleus of dudes that he can build around. And, Joe, they can win some football games. But is Mike Elko really ready to come into the SEC at Texas A&M, no less, which, by the way, he was there and he knows the culture. Does he know, or is he ready to take that program to where they want to go?
As you mentioned, we both were really pushing for this Elko hire. And I think that I'm even more than you thought that this was the move that they had to go with. I think that going after Bob Stoops Mark Stoops was not as exciting or the right move compared to hiring Elko. I'm actually shocked that was their original option. That was who they wanted to go with. For me, what makes this work perfectly, as I said, why he should have been the guy from the jump, is that he has built a team at Duke with the identity of what works now in college football and especially in the SEC. Developing a physical roster with a really good defensive line that runs the ball very, very well. That is what will work in the SEC. I think, though, more importantly is, one, he's been there before. He understands the dynamic. He is not jumping in and having to spend the whole first year figuring out what it's like having to deal with the boosters and the fan base, which are some of the most ambitious and, let's be honest, crazy fans in college football. They have very, very high expectations. Knowing how to manage that stuff and being around that already is going to help him. But the biggest thing that is not talked about enough with Texas A&M is that they do not have a history of being a winning football program, yet they have national championship expectations. They have gone and hired multiple head coaches with the anticipation that if you brought somebody in who took over a winning program and led them to national championships or just good seasons, that they would come right in and do the same thing at Texas A&M. You need somebody to build a sturdy foundation, and I know for a fact that Mike Elko is going to do that because he did that quickly in 2 years at Duke. That is a program that is never good at football. Duke is never, ever competitive or good at football, and that was one of the best teams in the ACC. I would argue they would be the second or third best team this year had Riley Leonard not gone down with the injury that he suffered because they did not have a backup option. So plain and simple, this to me is the best hire so far today. And if I were to grade it, I think I would give it an A-.
I can't go with the A-. Okay, let me tell you why. Okay, look, do I think that Mike Elko has the potential to be an A-, A type of hire? Yes, I do. Okay, like, do I think that Mike Elko having Elijah Robinson on board with him, who, by the way, was the D-line coach there. I mean, Elijah Robinson's been there for 6 years, knows Mike Elko, knows his system. They both know recruiting. Defensively, I think that they're going to really be good. Okay. I can't say that yet because I don't know what he's going to do and how he's going to hire offensively. Okay.
It's fair.
Also, look, the SEC, for what it's worth, kind of got poo-pooed upon this year because head-to-heads. You know, I saw Danny Cannell and our buddy who's, you know, commented on the show a couple of times, and somebody that we talked to, Josh Payton, him and Danny going at it. Everybody's talking about, oh, the SEC's down because of head-to-head. Okay, well, you beat Florida in 2 of those games. Like, calm down, Peter Pan. All right? The SEC historically, at least the last 20 years, has been the best conference in the country. Maybe it has a down year here or there. Nevertheless, I do think that the SEC is still the deepest conference. When you talk about Ole Miss, Missouri, LSU, and others, like that's the middle of the pack teams in the SEC. Now, Mike Elko comes into Texas A&M. You have Texas and Oklahoma that are coming into the SEC. I think that they could struggle a little bit coming out of the gate. I think defensively they'll be tough. I think they'll be a hard-nosed, gritty football team. I think they're going to get after it. But, Joe, I do wonder what Elko will be able to do offensively, but he's got some pieces. He's got Connor Weigman. Now, let's see what happens with Weigman. Does Weigman stay? Does he have any kind of input on the offensive system? I do like what Elko runs. We saw what he ran at Duke, right? Like, look, he's going to run the football, but he kind of had to run the football a lot at Duke. He also has the system that we've seen, though, in the SEC that has started to work. We see it at Georgia. We see it at Bama. We've seen it at Michigan. We've seen it at places. Hell, Ohio State tried to implement it and just lost to Michigan. I think that they'll struggle out of the gate. I think year 3, okay, would be the year that you would have to judge him based upon what he can do. But I will tell you this. It's going to be easier for him now to get A&M to the relevance part of things because the playoff is expanding. Joe, in 3 years, if he can't get them to a playoff, he's no better than Jimbo. He's no better than Kevin Sumlin, okay? Right. I think he can do some good things there, and I think people – look, he likes to recruit. He wants to recruit. I think that they are really good at developing under him. We've seen that. We've seen players underneath him develop. I just really worry for them and that team offensively, how they'll transpire and what they'll look like next year, depending upon who his OC hire would be. I give it a B. I give it a B plus. Okay.
I don't disagree with that. I thought you were going to say B minus. Then I would have debated with you.
B plus. I lean more of a B. I just look, Joe, the guy's 16-9 as a head coach, right? You just spent – here's another thing that we got to talk about. You just spent $78 million to fire Jimbo to bring back a guy that Jimbo Fisher hired as his DC now, right?
Well, yeah, but we can agree, though, that they're two very, very different people. And I also – this was one of the other things that I paid a lot of attention to with this hire. It was pretty noticeable, the transition and the difference in just the tone and the chemistry of the roster and the defense after he left. They had a really tough year the following year after he was gone. I think that that's pretty telling of what he's capable of doing and how important he was for that roster. And again, he knows what it takes to be successful at Texas A&M. Like he understands what it's going to take.
Because they never were. I mean, if you want to give him the COVID year.
One of the best years that they had was the last year that he was there. That's the crazy part. And I know it's a COVID year and some of us tend to discredit, that season. But because even the year that they beat Bama, what was their final record? Didn't they finish with like 3 losses or something?
Yeah, I think they were 8-4.
Right. But to come back on
mistaken, remember they had the potential to go 9-3, and believe it or not,
yes,
Max Johnson, okay, who's also in the transfer portal. Max Johnson was the one at LSU that flew the fade route to Jeray Jenkins.
It's hilarious.
To make LSU bowl eligible and for Texas A&M to be 8-4.
Good for Johnson to hop in the portal. I think somebody's going to scoop him up. That's going to get a good starting quarterback. To talk about the offensive stuff though that you're bringing up, I understand and I agree with the notion and the reasoning for bringing it up, because you can really swing and miss with this, and you don't need to put together a team that's really good defensively that can't move the ball. There's plenty of teams in college football that have the same problem. A lot of people are asking, and people have asked me on Twitter, and I saw somebody say it in the chat, the possibility that Riley Leonard transfers to Texas A&M. I don't think that happens. On some pretty good sourcing, I have an understanding of where he's going to go.
Riley Leonard.
I don't think there's that much of a gap, but I will say I'm not running off Connor Weigman. I would do whatever it takes to keep that kid, because that kid is very, very talented. He has a very live arm, and if you get a good offensive coordinator, you get one or two or at least one good transfer portal offensive lineman. I don't know, man. That offense could be pretty strong next year if things go according to plan.
Connor Weigman is better to me. I will.
He's a better passer. I think Riley Leonard
is a better overall quarterback.
I think Riley Leonard's a more impactful quarterback because of what he brings to the table as an athlete. They're very different. I don't think it's apples and oranges. I don't think it's really easy to compare them. I think I know where Riley Leonard is going to go, and I can't really provide context on that because I have not been given, necessary approval to say any of the things of where he might end up going.
I mean, basically, you're just saying Notre Dame.
I'm not saying Notre Dame, but somebody who I know that has spoken to him, he is not going to Notre Dame. He's not going to Notre Dame.
I don't believe you.
He's not going to Notre Dame.
Joe, do you think it's how big of a deal is it that Elijah Robinson, who's been tabbed as one of the best defensive recruiters or just recruiters in general, as his DC? Because again, Elko's going to call plays. I think that him making that the first bit of business that he would do, I think that's also a big key for him.
You have to keep him as well. Him and Connor Weigman, keeping the both of them a coach and your most important offensive player, that's critical. That is number one move that Elko needs to do, because as you're talking about here with Robinson, we saw all of the defensive recruits that not only came in, but one of the position groups that wasn't completely torn apart by the transfer portal was your defensive line. And there's going to be a bunch of guys that get drafted pretty early once they enter the NFL draft.
Well, look, and when you are able to build along the line of scrimmage like they have done and keep that intact, and those guys hitting the portal, and look, Elko recruited a lot of these guys that he can get to stay with him, and so right. I think it's a big deal. I like Mike Elko. I love that he is a tough, gritty head coach. He's from your neck of the woods. He's from Jersey. He's from, I think, North Brunswick, South Brunswick, whatever it is, New Jersey.
South Brunswick, not too far.
South Brunswick, New Jersey. So look, he's a tough, gritty coach, and I think that they need that. I think Jimbo wasn't as tough as he led on to be. Okay, so look, you need a tough, gritty coach. Now look, they're going to have to go into the state of Texas and start out recruiting the Longhorns. Can they do that? Because look, you've had some good recruiting classes, but Sark from the offensive side of things has been taking you to school a little bit. He's been winning some of these battles here of late. Okay, so you're going to have to go in there and win some of those battles.
Yeah.
All right. Jonathan Smith is where you want to go next?
Yeah, let's talk about I thought you said you want to go Lebby.
I do want to go Lebby. Can we go?
All right, let's go Lebby.
All right.